Welcome to Kamen Con, podcast about Kamen Rider. Today we are going to be talking about Kamen Rider logos with my special guest, Christi. Hello, Christi. Good evening.
Oh, hello. Good evening.
We were just talking
Awesome
about
to
logos.
be back again.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
it was just quite recently, and I was so happy you took the time to come back and talk to us about Kamen Rider, the show's logos. The previous one we met was so interesting to me and the viewers about our logo, your design for my logo. So explain. So I know you because we know each other, but also from a professional standpoint, you are my logo designer. So we have you here particularly to talk about Kamen Con logos because you're a professional graphic artist, right? So you could just say your background and your profession here.
Oh, yeah. So I'm Christi, and I own Christi Creative, and that's Christi with Christi.
Oh, looky there.
My name. There I am.
I had it ready to go.
So, thank you. So I have worked with Bell's clothing line. I have worked with Feld Entertainment. I've also now I work solely with my own clients. I have my own graphic design business called Christi Creative. I studied at the New York Institute of Technology in Manhattan, which interestingly enough is where the Pixar creators were graduates. So sort of an interesting little thing there. So I won't tell you when I graduated, but over the years I have picked up some wonderful just nuances and honed my skills in graphic design. Specifically, I love logo design because it generally has to be very small, or not small, but generally a very simple design that has to convey a large message. So it's one of the bigger challenges because it has to be utilized across such a diverse medium. So yes, I am very thrilled to be your logo designer. I've also done your apparel and some merchandise.
I've been blessed to have your creative talents put to good use for my business, as well as I've told you on the previous podcast and in life in general. Is I'm so proud to be associated with something that sophisticated. And the Kamen Con logo you created for me is one of my favorite things you've ever made for me. It helps because I'm super into Kamen Rider, but it's more that if you go back, and I'll link it up top here with the previous video we talked about at length about your thoughts and design ideas for why I love my Kamen Con logo so much. And that's what we're going to do tonight, is look at the actual Kamen Rider logos. We've got 10, and we are going to name a winner. We'll see if we have the same winner. I kind of already know the answer, but we'll let the audience wait to see if we're in consensus or not. But just looking at your website quickly, you'll see here, there's one thing you worked on, and that's the Maneki Neko that you designed for me there. You have it on your website. So clearly you're proud of it. And of course, I love mine.
Yes, I need to add some more. I need to add the Kamen Con logo, and the Mecha Neko needs to go on the website too.
Christi just recently made one for our YouTube channel. Is at Mecha from Japan. And there's the logo is a version of this Maneki Neko that you custom made. It's so wonderfully custom made with such thoughtful details. But I think the Mecha Neko one is almost better in any way. People can go see that when they go to at Mecha from Japan. But the only thing, when I pulled up your page, I never have asked you about it, but since we're talking about Kamen Rider, which is all motorcycles, you've got this motorcycle thing here. What was that briefly? Can you tell us about that, since that's pretty much Kamen Rider?
Yeah, so when I worked with Feld Entertainment, I was on the Supercross division of the advertising team. So I worked solely on, or almost solely, I worked a little bit on their monster trucks and some of the other things as well, but I would say 95% of the time it was the motorbike racing. So that is one of my campaign developments that unfortunately wasn't able to come to fruition because of external factors, but I won't get into it.
It looks snazzy.
Yeah, so so this was going to be a campaign for it was the Monster Energy Drink Championship for Supercross. Yeah, so and it always took place in California, so that's why you have the surfer in the background. Yeah,
I just see
yeah.
motorcycle and think Kamen Rider. Not that I don't. I appreciate the fact that that was something that a client wanted, or a professional need for your skills. But probably when you did that, you had no idea that later on you'd be Kamen Ridering it up. Because as we said on the other one, you've watched the first full 2 years or first season of Kamen Rider. So this puts you in a, not just let's evaluate the logo from a professional standpoint, but as we've talked about before, you're not a hardcore Kamen Rider nerd yet, but you're way farther in than almost 95% of the American population has not seen any of it.
I'm a budding. It's a little sprout, and all it takes is a little bit more. Yes, actually, in looking at well, the subject of our video, in looking at the logos, I was intrigued by a lot of the styles, and that made me want to watch that season because of the way the logo was designed. It made me really curious to see how how the storyline would be for that particular season.
Well, I'm very pleased and so happy you could take the time to come on again on really short notice to talk about the official Kamen Rider logos, because I was going to try to wing it, and I'm such a fanboy that they could serve up crap in a trough and I'm going to eat it up like it's cotton candy. I love everything about it. Doesn't mean I can't evaluate maybe good or bad design, but I love Kamen Rider so much. It's just nonstop. Oh, I love this one. Oh, I love this one. I like that one. I mean, as I'm researching which ones were going to be my favorites, I just had a hard time choosing, and I didn't look at any of them and go, well, who made that? Because they're all, and there's some incredibly talented people making lots of things in Japan, but especially Kamen Rider is this gigantic enterprise that just some of the top talents in all of Japan are working on. And I, of course, would assume graphic design and logo design, because every year there's a new Kamen Rider, so every year we have new forms, new designs. Gav right now is its own thing. I mean, it's an entire show where it's vastly different than just 1 year before. So of course they have a logo for each one. So you and I have I've looked at every logo that's been made briefly. Were you able to go? There's not 500 of them. The main logos of the main shows, there's whatever, 50 or something.
I found a website that listed off all of them, and it said the years that logo covered.
Okay.
I forget the name of the website
Well,
now, but yeah, I was able to find from the beginning on to Gav.
And I have them here, and of course you compiled yours and sent them to me, and I put them in a folder. So we're going to show them now. We can go over the top 10, our top 10 favorites, and we will again declare a winner at the end. You haven't seen mine, so there will be a little bit of a surprise, and you'll have to wing it in terms of commenting on the ones that I've chosen. I have full knowledge. You have 60% knowledge. But let's move on then to our first one, and that would be, see if I can blow this thing up. That is Kamen Rider 01, and they've conveniently for us Americans put some English below it. Now, I don't think they did it for Americans, but this is for the first one in the modern era Kamen Rider. And so Kamen Rider is like nearly unheard of in the States, other than the hardcore fans that are clearly watching in this content. There's the people that love it in the United States just love it because we're this little group of stuff. But I do think at some point along the line, they did start including English in their logo design for the internationalization of this. Not that Kamen Rider is not huge all over the world, but especially for me in the United States, being able to let someone see anything with any English just helps a little bit for me. But this is the 01. This is one of the ones you chose.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you love about it?
I will speak on this. I was really intrigued by the 01. Now when I was in college, one of my favorite classes was typography. And we had Dr. Dispigna, who's an old Italian guy, and he would have us do typography by hand first, old school. So it made me appreciate how each letter is developed before it's ever done on a computer. So I actually really, really appreciate the 01 because it looks like to me that's not from a pre-made font, that was made custom just for this logo. The way that the 0 it's similar to the variation to the O that I did in our Common Con logo, where I made the O smaller and I added a little dash under it because the O has that empty space in it. They made the 0 something unique as well, because it could just be a very, very boring kind of just circle. So they've added this vertical line through it that has a very dynamic just element to it, whereas the rest of the logo more or less has this diagonal. So it's an interesting contrast. You have all this diagonal, then you
Mm.
have a straight down like this. And the one is a nice complement because it also has a diagonal to it, but it's kind of just, you know, it's close. It's the kerning. It's so I'm going to speak a little graphic design. Kerning is the spacing between the characters, so you can adjust the kerning to be closer. So that's what they did because otherwise there would be this awkward kind of a space between the 0 and the 1. So they brought the kerning
Yeah,
together.
there's not so much
And
space there at
yeah,
all.
yeah, right. So, and they also smartly filled the space in the middle of the 0 with the katakana, I believe,
Yeah, it's
that goes,
katakana.
yeah, goes into the 0. So there's also that filling of the space, so you don't have your eye doesn't just go to emptiness. I also appreciate that they boldly chose this neon yellow with this hint of green in it because that's very, very hard to successfully use that color. I never touch yellow because yellow
Mm.
gets lost in white, and a lot of things are printed on white. So, yes, they have a black outline to it, and that really makes the yellow pop. But in additionally, yellow can be very just kind of assault the eyes if it's too bright. But it was a very bold choice, and I think it works with just the general layout. I think it gets your attention. It says Kamen Rider because of the bold yellow and the red combined, but it's also unique from all the other common logos that I saw.
Right, and I have my hardcore Kamen Rider nerd friends are going to probably shoot me because I haven't seen Zero One, and it's very popular. So I know ballpark what it's about, but I haven't seen every Kamen Rider show. I've seen most of them, but Zero One's kind of unusual that I hadn't seen it because two things have happened. The rider's main form looks bumblebee-ish. He's just red. I'm sorry, black and yellow, just like the logo, right? And I think it's the least successful visual Kamen Rider main design that I know of in all of Kamen Rider. I don't dislike it, but I just find it to be very it's just not interesting to me. That said, like lots of things, be careful what you're talking about when you don't know what you're talking about, because every Kamen Rider person I know, which is a significant number, loves the show. So, of course, when you love the show and they have different forms, they turn into different things. So you were talking about the yellow is a sort of a challenging thing. Well, we have a couple of the models here in the Gun for Japan store in Tampa, Florida, where I'm recording this. And we have not the latest Bandai model that's coming. They're starting the Reiwa era, which is the modern era, and the first one was 01. And so they're making a full figurized model for it. But the only one we currently have is sort of an entry grade that's very basic. So the colors are basic, the build is basic, and I built it. So I'm kind of a little down on it, and so it impacts my looking at the logo, wondering, I think the logo is much more successful than the guy's main suit is, and you've provided an image. And let me show that. That is the next one. So that's the basic main rider form that I'm talking about here. So
Yeah.
let me ask you, well, before I go back to that image, let me ask you about, because this is where you really can shine here and teach me and everybody else who's listening. What is a logo? Is it just text? Is it graphics? Is it a combination? What is, when someone say a logo, what does that mean? You're talking about typography, right?
Yeah, so a logo could be an image, it could be text. It's really just whatever the designer says is the logo. So say for example, Coca-Cola, its logo is the wording Coca-Cola. Or you could have Target and their logo is a target, or it can be the words Target. So when you have, I'll use Target as an example again, where you have the logo of the Target and the wording beneath, which I'm sure everyone has seen that in advertising. That is called a logo lock up, which means that the elements are locked together and they are used via brand guidelines to only be in that position. So only a specific spacing, not too far, not too close to each other, not too small via the brand guidelines. Very, very specific and very, very detailed, depending on the usually the bigger the brand, say again like Target or Coca-Cola, the more specific and particular the brand guidelines are. I've worked, for example, on Disney's Disney on Ice, and they have probably the most rigid brand guidelines.
Okay.
um, so, so again, to kind of go back to what your question was, it really just kind of depends on what, again, the graphic designer or the design team creates, and but what also the client feels best represents their business. So if they feel that an image, a graphical image or an icon represents their business, then that's the logo. Or if it's going to be words like FedEx, that's the logo. But in general, it's not going to be, a long sentence, C-spot run kind of a thing, because then it gets so long that it's not flexible and you can't utilize it on a small scale, say like on a business card. Then the
Okay.
information gets kind of muddied and difficult to comprehend,
Well,
and then it's just not effective.
I appreciate the explanation because you've sent me files that say logo lockup. I have no idea what that was, and to
Yeah, I
show you,
know.
yes, to show you how insane that is, I've tried to make YouTube banners from some of the stuff you've sent me, and I unlock it, sort of in the most crude way possible, and it's amazing how fast it falls apart. To me, it's incredible how quickly what I've done ruins it, and because
Don't
I.
touch it.
I know, yeah, I know it looks groovy with the way you've done it, but sometimes I just need this one to be over here, kind of, because I don't know what I'm doing. But it goes to your point. Those things are there for a reason because a very smart creative designer made it. And then you give it to me that doesn't know what he's doing and promptly wrecks it. I'm sure you've seen a few things I've done with your poor things, and you're probably ready to pull your hair out. But
Do I
now
need to make guidelines for you?
well, you should make it unlock. Well, it's not even really unlockable because I can just move it off the screen. Just like, especially when
Yeah.
you don't know what you're doing, you can really. So at least I'm aware of the problems. But I didn't know when you said lockup. I kind of figured it was this one image, but I didn't really give as much thought to. No wonder I'm messing this up because. I mean, I was just moving them around willy-nilly because it's locked in place. That image is locked in place, right? So even us complete don't know what we're doing types can immediately recognize when it's gone south real fast, as if you do anything besides what someone like you has created for me. Now, but
Yeah.
we're talking text versus. Let me go back one here. Text versus images, right? So they kind of have a combination of because the top line here, and we've talked about this when we looked at the logo you created for me. So that's Kamen Rider, right? So you get to learn to recognize that even if you can't read Japanese. And then the 01's written in katakana, and then the 01, and you were breaking down the logo in terms of its component parts. But it's a little bit of a combination here, and then in other. So we're only showing one logo in many cases of the 10 that we're going to show. But in many cases, they have it locked up with an image in combination with their text. And so this one is sometimes incorporated. We happen to have it separated out here. But you provided this to me. Did you want to comment on just the head design that they've done here?
Well, I just thought that the mask was particularly interesting for 01. Because it's yellow. Again, with yellow can be either a happy color or it can be an aggressive color. A lot of colors convey certain emotions. So you may or may not have noticed, say for example, a lot of restaurants, particularly fast food restaurants, their logos will be in warmer tones, say like a red or an orange, because psychologically those colors convey hunger. so so yellow is interesting because it can kind of be one or the other. It can be either aggressive or it can be happy, and
Mm.
here they've actually made it an aggressive color. Even particularly with these almost like angry, the antenna kind of look like angry eyebrows in a way,
Yeah.
add a little bit more aggression, and along the jawbone also continuing that aggressive diagonal. So I just thought that was a very interesting way to, in a simpler form, illustrate the mask that Kamen Rider would wear in this in 01. I just thought it was really, really interesting looking, so I wanted to include that.
Well, this is not the McDonald's Golden Arches Happy Meal
No.
yellow for sure. And again, this is when I haven't watched the show. You don't like the ones I have seen the show that we'll see the next one for are the many of the logos I've seen almost all the shows. Just a few I haven't, and then you understand why they made it look that way. Like I don't know, 01 Angry. I mean, I've never seen enough of the show to know. Is it because this mask and Kamen Rider's the hero. They're not typically scary or dangerous looking necessarily, right? I mean, there's a lot of different Kamen Rider shows. So it's interesting. So this is a case where I'm actually more interested to watch it now to think, well, I don't know, maybe the main character's got an axe to grind or something because the image is that way. I think the next one we've got is, there's just the 01. I guess you provided that to me. And then
I did, yeah.
They've outlined it in white.
It is outlined in white. Yeah, they reversed it, which you can definitely do in branding. So I know that you mentioned we were talking about the logo lockup, and the first logo we showed of 01 is very complex, and a lot of the probably all of them, all the Kamen Rider logos have a lot of complexity to them. So another thing that is generally done when you have a very complex logo is that you will have logo variations, simpler versions that are within brand, still identifiable as the brand, but that can also be used on a smaller scale. Say Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate, if you're familiar with that at all. It's a very long name, but that is in their logo. And they have this kind of a burgundy coin above the name. And one thing you can do is just use the coin if you need to use the logo on a much smaller scale. So I wanted to comment on the fact that they had just the 01 separated, because I think this also gives them the flexibility to still utilize the brand and still convey the brand, but again, in a much more simpler, smaller scale if need be.
Right. Well, on the screen right now, there's the parallelogram that you designed for me, and we talk about that at length in a very interesting way. I was so fascinated in the details that you explained in our previous video about it. But the parallelogram is a graphical way to go, well, that's Kamen Rider, because it was based off of the original Kamen Rider seasons stuff. So to any Kamen Rider person, they would go, Kamen Rider. But to a non-Kamen Rider person, they wouldn't know that. But the 01 actually would kind of work the same way. To Kamen Rider people, they would immediately know that's 01. You don't need anything but that. Now, a non-Kamen Rider person wouldn't know that, but then a non-Kamen Rider person wouldn't know the significantly more obvious parallelogram with Shocker and that, right? So I think in that regard, not is it reduced, but it's magnificent in that because the name is 01, they could make a logo that just absolutely communicated that in any other way they wanted to without any words whatsoever.
Yes, and that is the beauty of a very strong logo, is in its simplest form, you still know exactly what it is.
Well, I'll nonstop point out the stuff you did for me because I just love your logo. Your game. It isn't just to stroke your ego, Christy. It's because I love the logo you made for me. And so I'll insert it every chance I can, legitimately, because I really love it that much. And this one, Christy, we're talking about the Kamen Rider logos, but like anything that's custom made for you and your own brand, it's easy to, when you love it and you adopt it and it becomes almost a part of yourself. And so being associated with sophisticated, well thought out logo like you've given me in other places in my life, in the business, but through Kamen Rider especially, as I'm such an incredible fan of it. This is why I sort of geek out completely about what you did for me, because I've already attached myself to it. That it almost represents me. It's on to be on the business card. It's a calling card for myself personally, but as well as for the business and the podcast here. Next up is one of mine. So this is a surprise one for you. I couldn't find a bit larger image. Let's see if I can I blow? Oh, I can blow the thing up. Okay. So this is Double, Kamen Rider Double. You can see there's some English below there. If you can make that out, it says Kamen Rider Double below Kamen Rider. And we won't get into Masked Rider or Kamen Rider. It's a whole podcast about when they decided to change and use those names. They literally use, even in Japanese, they'll call up to a certain era Masked Rider, and then they change to Kamen Rider. So they switch around. That's just Kamen Rider lore trivia. But here they've called it Kamen Rider Double. But when Americans or anyone that doesn't really Kamen Rider really well, or even Kamen Rider fans, I chose this one because for a couple of reasons. I've seen the show, and so I can think better about why they were doing this. But it's from the Latin letter essentially there's no W in Latin, I guess. Look, this is just what I've been told. Hardly know enough of the Latin alphabet, but it's actually two V's put together, because I guess in Latin that's how it worked. So it's double V's, but it's called double because Kamen Rider, it's two Kamen Riders that come together. That's why it's green on one side and black on the other. And then Fang Joker and Cyclone, they have different, they have names for the individual sort of compilations of the Kamen Rider. So from a logo standpoint, people will say W, but it's actually double. It's Kamen Rider double, but we just read it as a W.
Yeah.
But of course, Japanese don't have a W, so they don't really have that confusion like we do in English. I'm talking even Kamen Rider people are not quite 100%, and you'll even see conversations online where people will say about the logo, what do you call? Do you call them double or then most people just revert back to if it's Fang Joker, they call him that, right? Or whatever it is from the show. But it's a really interesting thing with the logo for me, which is why I chose it, was you can see, and I've chosen this image on purpose, his half green has got the half green. And then the black, and so that is the logo. This isn't just a variant for this particular picture. And then they have the writing with the red and the orange. And again, you've not seen this or knew that I was going to choose this. I have a second one here without the rider, so you can see just the logo. But what do you, now that I've explained to you that it's a coming together of Kamen Riders, what do you think of this one? Did you see this before we went on the podcast here?
When I was going through the list of all the logos, I did see it. But I didn't know the background of it.
Okay.
So I knew, by the name that it's a double, I could see that clearly there were two shapes together just because of the difference in color, the green and the black. But I didn't know there were two Kamen Riders that actually came together, as you showed in the picture before. What I thought was interesting was in the previous picture that I'm not sure what you would actually call it, the antenna, I guess, on the forehead, is what inspired the two V's together in the logo. Now that they're a little bit of a skew because that's the general dynamic of the Kamen Rider logos, that they all have that kind of italicized stance to them. So I see that they did that also with the actual two shapes that they put together. They added a little bit of a diagonal, but that's just again to kind of tie the whole brand together to be cohesive. So I mean, I think that's really interesting. They also added, looks like, some texture into it, maybe looks like almost like computer data or something in the green.
That's embedded in the show. I mean, that is a little nod to something that is not just design. It is part of the show a little bit. Yeah.
Got it.
Here's a motorcycle that's kind of black and green. You're talking about the antenna of the V. Showa era was primarily bugs. They were bug design superheroes, and a lot of people really like when the Kamen Rider does maintain that bug look on its face. They've moved away from it here and there, and I think they sort of had to, because it wasn't that it was repetitive. Like, how many bugs can you do? Kabuto's a bug. But since you've watched the first entire 100 episodes or whatever it is of the first season, you're of course very, very familiar with the whole bug thing. And so this one's actually quite a bit later. So we're out of Showa era at this point, but they're still using, in some cases when they can, the bug eyes and the thing. So the logo does. They're fully aware that a lot of people really like the bug thing, but they're not going to be a slave to it any longer. But in this case, I think that had to have been what they were going for, is to the little nod to the old stuff.
Yeah.
Older stuff.
Yeah. One other thing I'll note, actually, I don't know if you're familiar with the term complementary colors. So those are colors that are the exact opposite on the color wheel. Purple, the exact opposite color of purple is yellow, and the exact opposite of green is red. So generally, if you put those two colors together, particularly on a screen, you'll get what's called a vibration, where your eyes like, ooh, those are not playing very well together. I don't know why they're called complementary, because they don't play nice. But here they've actually done that, and the way that they kept the vibration from happening is that they added a white outline, and they added what looks like a drop shadow to add some dimension to make the actual kanji and katakana pop up off of the the larger V, or what we call the W. So that's interesting that they intentionally used contrasting complementary colors to add a little bit more boldness to it. It was an interesting design choice. It worked really well, actually.
I had a friend of mine try to explain that color wheel thing to me one time. I guess he had gone to graphic school or something, and I didn't know what he's talking about. I mean, I get it; it's the reverse or something, but that what you said just makes way more sense, because now when you see it, they clearly chose red on the green, and then, like you said, yellow was the opposite of purple, and it fades to a more of a yellow. So the transition then winds up being orange. So clearly, who designed this one knew that little bit of the complementary reverse colors, right?
Yes, they knew what they were doing. They went to art school.
But it certainly pops right off the image. I mean, for us, where it is a lot of green and purple, but it's just, I like this one because without me knowing, that's why it affected me. But I like that it's just like, blam, it's there, and you know, it's just immediately obvious. Now we're using the guy behind it, but even this, I guess maybe I prefer that separation where there's a dramatic difference. Maybe that's just my personal preference to like that kind of thing. Or maybe, like say, once they've designed it, most humans would go, well, that's really interesting. You don't even know why you think it's cool. But anyway, that's why I picked this one, because obviously my grading of these things is just, I thought it was cool. Smart as I get about the design choices.
It's a cool choice.
All right,
I did consider it, actually. It was a consideration when I was going through everything.
Okay, well, the number 8, or the third one we've had here, is yours. So this is, explain this one. Hibiki, yes.
Okay, so this one I thought was really interesting because it just does not match any of the other Kamen Rider logos that I saw listed out.
You have no idea, young lady, but I'll explain a little bit to you. Go ahead. You're on to it exactly.
So I'm looking at this and I'm like, this looks like it could be some ghostly, haunted darkness. Maybe a shinobi jumps out of the shadow. I'm like, what is going to happen here? Like, in the way that they've not, everything is vertical, first of all. In all the other logos, it reads Kamen Rider horizontally. Now this is vertical, and they have a very thick, bold calligraphy behind the red kanji and katakana. So it's just very, very ominous, and so many of the Kamen Riders that I looked at are colorful and almost, I mean, they're aggressive, but they're happy at the same time, sort of like a for the whole family kind of a thing, they almost feel. And this looks like it could be something nightmarish. So I was really, really intrigued by that, and I wanted to bring that up. So please tell me, what is the background of this?
You didn't wiki it or anything? Do you really just picked it because the design is so different? Do you really not know what about the story of Hibiki?
No, I didn't. I did not cheat when I picked out my logos. I did not look up the backstories.
Well, we're talking about logo design already. It's just you get like massive extra credit. I assumed exactly that's what you did. I didn't assume you looked it up and realized it was really a different kind of a show. This is the most different kind of Kamen Rider show out there. There's entire YouTube episodes of people talking at length about why. So we're here to talk about logo design, and I'll just keep it just really, really, really brief. But we have, in this particular case, Hibiki was not meant to be a Kamen Rider show. That's the big thing. So there it is. There's the punchline. It was not intended to be. And so, yes, we could go on for 15 minutes about, this has been covered at length on ye old internet, that Hibiki got shoehorned and became a Kamen Rider show. So there's a lot of Oni and devil and mystical stuff going on, and they kind of just made it Kamen Rider after. But what's interesting is the Kamen Rider people all have embraced it. Really find a lot of people, it's a lot of their favorites, but yet, so no one goes, well, they were short a Kamen Rider show and they needed to find something. When you hear the story of it, it is a little bit like, it's kind of cool they did it, but no wonder it's really odd and sort of out of place, but yet it's still so good. Because each Kamen Rider can be quite different. And I think he has a really cool Honda Rune motorcycle. So there's lots of stuff about Hibiki you can like. Bandai also makes a model of this, and he's beating on the taiko drums. It is a very different Kamen Rider show. You wouldn't want someone to watch Hibiki who's trying to learn about Kamen Rider, because they would be like, they might really love it, but they're so different. So I applaud you for picking up that this design would, of course. Now I don't know the history of the design. If I would assume that they really literally tacked this on at the end as a Kamen Rider show. I would imagine the design of this was something that existed before they decided to be a Kamen Rider show. Now, I don't know that, but as you look at the red here, I'm pointing at the screen like someone can see me pointing at the screen. How would I point at the screen? The red, the kanji and katakana, now for people that are maybe new to Kamen Rider, you start to learn to read Kamen Rider. Right, because the da part, when we go back to the episode, you look at what you did with Kamen Con logo, you can make out the da because it's ta with the 1010, right? So once you can make that one out, you can read the end of the word, even if you're not familiar with Japanese. So the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters is Kamen Rider, and then there's a little dash, and then you've got hibiki. And so you can, even without reading Japanese, you can make out that they overlaid this thing, as you pointed out. So that's the end of the story. Is you picked out something that's really different and really cool, and it's purposely different. Like weirdly, how we even got it to be a Kamen Rider show is its own little. Again, there's YouTube's galore about just this topic, the weirdness that is hibiki, but still, almost everybody loves it.
Yeah, and the other thing that I thought was interesting about this is that from what I could see from all the other logos, that they would have some sort of element that belonged to the Kamen Rider, either, as you said, a simplified illustration of the face, or their emblem, something that would let you know that, kind of give you a hint, a little tease to what that Kamen Rider is going to be like when you actually start watching that series. This doesn't hint anything. It's the coloring is mysterious, the painted look to it is mysterious, and they don't tell you. They just say this is hibiki and that's it.
Yeah. Well, this wasn't some sort of test by any means. You picked it, you sent it to me. I mean, you could have looked it up or what. I just kind of assumed you liked the design and you chose it because it was different. But it was a great moment here on the podcast. You get like massive credit for you exactly picked it out based on the logo without any other information yet. So the next one we have up is this one, which is one of mine. So you haven't seen it. So you supplied logos to me, and I'm now springing it on you. You're seeing it for the first time. This is from the latest and greatest Kamen Rider show, Kamen Rider Gav. And I love it. I love this show. I told you on the first podcast we'd done together, I started the podcast, even though I was a huge Kamen Rider fan, but Gav just has me so into this show. I just love it because it's so goofy and fun, but yet heartfelt. And the third episode comes out now. Actually, I have the third episode. I can go watch it. I haven't seen it. So I've only seen the first two.
This is where Pringles Man comes from.
This is where Pringles Man comes from.
Oh, man. Okay.
This is potato chip show. So I didn't. So part of the problem with me choosing logos would be I would pick ones of shows that I actually love or like of the Kamen Riders that I like the most. But I was trying to evaluate it based on our first conversation about what you did for my logo and actually kind of look at it and decide why I liked it more than just I love the show and the marshmallows. I haven't actually seen the marshmallow guy, but I love the Pringles dude. But Kamen Rider Gav they have sort of their aliens. Spoiler alert, anybody's not seen the show. They have aliens and, well, you've got a lot of Kamen Rider to watch. I'm not sure Gav's next one. It eats, the main guy's eating gummies and potato chips, and it produces power-ups. But they're aliens that have the belt is actually an organ on their stomach. It's like a protruding thing on their actual stomach. It isn't a traditional belt that a Kamen Rider dude is wearing. He currently transforms and henshins into a Kamen Rider form. But this one's very different than everything else in that the belt itself is a mouth on their body. And of course, that's kind of weird, but that's where you see the logos going here, right? That it's just like a chewing, munching looking thing.
Actually chomping.
Yeah, so we have the Kamen Rider again there in smaller script. We get English again, Kamen Rider Gav, and then that. So there's some purple and some blue here. So what's your thoughts on this one now that you've had no time to prep? I just sort of sprung this one on you. What do you get out of this one?
I feel like I'm back in school.
Grade it, Christy.
This looks really fun. And based on what you told me, but there's like a chocolate a chocolate man, right? You got the potato chip guy,
There's a marshmallow dude.
guy, marshmallow, all delicious snacky things.
Yes.
And the logo is conveying that everybody it even wants to eat itself. It's just such a tasty theme. And so you have
The logo wants to
you
eat itself?
it does. Yes, it's so tasty. So Kamen Rider is perfectly fitting into the jaws of what is that? The central katakana character there.
Well,
Um,
they've gone with the 1010 here because, they have to add that when it changes the phonetic sound of it.
yeah,
So that's where you get
yeah, it has the little. Okay.
gavu. I mean, we get GAVV in English, but of course that's,
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
Romaji.
So I studied years ago. I wanted to go to Japan, so I told myself I was going to learn Japanese, and I got as far as the hiragana. I didn't get to the katakana, so
That's right,
one
because
day I will still learn it.
that's right, because in school, when you first start learning Japanese, you learn hiragana, kakiku
Yes.
keiko, and then you immediately move on to katakana, and then you
Yes.
learn some kanji. And so by a third grader knows, I think, a couple hundred kanji. There's 5,000 or 6,000 in the even a fairly erudite Japanese adult. Ballpark knows 3,000 or 4,000, but I think there's like 5,000 or 6,000 kanji. So many times they have to use hiragana, they have to use script above the kanji and they use katakana or hiragana depending on what they need to, so that someone can read what the kanji is. So for effect, for foreign words, for graphical reasons, they will a lot of times use katakana because it's just more striking and artistic and a little more aggressive looking. And so a lot of it is just artistic choices. It's not a linguistic thing that they only can make that sound in katakana. The sounds are largely duplicated. So they're using katakana again. Now, I'm not a Japanese language expert. For all I know, the gavu, or the Japanese needed them to use. I don't know that level. I frankly am not even that interested. I just know that it's really cool. I love Mr. Pringles dude. And the logo, I just liked the outlining colors here. I like it. It does look happy and fun. In the show, the characters, because the Kamen Rider's they're in some other planet. It's usually almost always in Japan, and they're on it's day-to-day regular life. And so the main actor runs into this girl who runs this business, but in her home it's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. She's got it decorated and it's super cute. The design of it, everything about the show is just candy, gummies. Again, not fantastical, just your everyday living apartments. They've got it set up so everyone has this aesthetic of colorful pastels and this kind of thing. So the logo isn't quite that, but what do you think about the color choice here and the fading of the red to the orange in that?
That's so the fading of the red to the orange. I believe they did that just to kind of mute the red, because the red, if you have too much red, it can just be too much, too demanding. So I think that they added that subtle gradient just to kind of break up all the solid red, add a little bit, some sort of a relief to the eye when you're looking at it. The outline of the purple and blue, so it's like a simplified gradient in a way, where you have black, and one of the closest color to black would be purple, and then the next to that is blue. So they're sort of fading out. So rather than just have a stark black outline around the logo itself, they added those extra colors to kind of just sort of gently just fade out a little bit, but the colors themselves are still really bold. So it's an interesting balance of gentle fade, but also bold color choice.
Well, and also the logos relate almost always, like 01, the colors are the guy's main form. So the main Gumi guy initially, Shoma, has blue and purple primarily, blue, purple, and black. That's his basic color. So, I mean, I'm not trying to sucker you, but they clearly put it in here for that.
But that makes perfect sense.
It's very interesting to hear that, from the color wheel thing of this, why they're even designing any of the Kamen Rider forms in that way. We have this is the mouth / belt. So of course, they're very into selling toys. People winky laugh about, why does Kamen Rider exist? And people will say to sell toys. I love the toys; they're amazing. I wish we could get them all here in the States, and we can't. But this would look like the actual belt, almost the toy would. I mean, they recreate it quite faithfully. So what's really weird is that it's a stomach that's attached to the alien's mouth. It does later sort of look more like a belt, and they're no doubt going to be. I know they are because they're already. You can pre-order these belts. This one, the belt, they always have a gimmick where you're inserting cards or you're flipping locks or you're doing different things. So these toys are extremely interactive, somewhat complex. There's a lot of combinations to it. But this one blew everybody away because it's a show about eating marshmallows and gummies and stuff. And the belt itself, you crank this handle on the side and it works like a mouth. You literally eat stuff. And I guess they're going to be releasing all the little gummies, and you put the gummies in the belt and you mimic what it does in the show. So it's all very comically campy. Oh my Lord, I can't believe the belt is a mouth that eats candy. I mean, they've never had anything like this, but I told you, I love it. It's just very different. And we don't get into a Gav thing, but you can see that if I had a picture of the Gav main character, I don't. But this is a pretty different Kamen Rider too, in the most wonderful kind of way. And this one's a purposeful Kamen Rider, not a hibiki.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was gathering, that it's intentionally its own unique thing, but it doesn't give the impression that it was almost an afterthought that it became Kamen Rider.
Even the mouth design looks a little. Does look a little samurai or maybe oni looking itself. It's sort of a character into itself.
Yeah. To me, it almost looks like one of those lion sculptures.
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah, it's that like the Chinese food dog or whatever those things are called. Yeah. Okay, well let's we'll be on Gav forever if you let me do it, and we need to get off of that. Let's go back to this one. This is one of yours, Christi.
Yes.
This is Kamen Rider Zeo. What you got here for this one? This is yours.
Yeah. So this. I really analyzed this, and I at first I thought that the shapes, those pointed shapes on the left side of the logo, at first I thought that was a speedometer, but then I'm like, no, I believe that's a clock because one hand is larger than the other.
Do you not? Did you look that up? Do you know it? It is, but did you know that, or are you still guessing that's what it is?
Based on just what I was looking at.
You're pulling another good hibiki moment here. Go ahead. You're on target. Yes, yes.
I found intriguing because the ability of that Kamen Rider must have something to do with either stopping time or moving quickly, maybe going back in time, something that I hadn't, in at least my quick research of Kamen Rider, come across. So I thought that was an interesting ability that, at least my interpretation of the logo, that they have. The other thing was that I like that it's almost a crystalline, silvery something. I'm not. It's almost, or platinum. It has this almost a delicate metallic look to it. Metal can, if it is indeed metal, metal can be get kind of muddy if you add too much texture to it. So here they just very subtly added a little bit of dimension to it, and they added that nice shine. I wish you could see where I was going to point.
Yeah.
So actually, right where your cursor is.
Actually, I forget. We don't. Yeah. At least I have a cursor.
Yeah.
You mean here on the big hand of it? You mean?
Little shines. Yeah, there.
Or around here.
Yes, on the corners. And it's interesting because in the graphic design world, usually lens flares and things like that are kind of almost like cheesy.
Yeah, the Star Trek cheesy lens flares everyone complains about.
Yeah, but they did it in a very sophisticated way here, where they're just a few. They don't really demand attention, but it is there to add a little bit of realism to show that there was light just bouncing right off of the corners there. I also liked they have this red, but it's sort of a pinky red. It's slightly different. So it's a really nice red. A lot of, like with the Kamen Rider that I made for you, that was based on more of the original color, which is sort of an orangey red. This one has a little more blue in it, and it's a nice subtle change to what I had seen with some of the other Kamen Rider logos.
I talked to someone recently where the Zeo was the first Kamen Rider they'd seen, and this is one that you wouldn't have them watch first, primarily because it's one of the what's called anniversary shows. So when they have anniversaries, they will sort of bring back a whole bunch of Kamen Riders. And so the time travel is very important because this is what allows them to story right in that the main character can time travel, and then they bring in, he sort of uses other Kamen Riders from a large number of Kamen Rider shows, brings them into Zeo. I personally love Zeo's Kamen Rider design himself, and then of course they have different forms. Kiva, they'll work up in forms. They'll all sort of work up in forms. Like we're already gone from gummies to potato chips in Gav, right? So Zeo's final form has his. It completely changes colors. They'll sometimes be completely different looking, one form to the other. They're not really iterations, or there can be like from gummies to potato chips. I mean, he's totally different colors. So this is very, very common. Zeo maintains a sort of same basic design-ish, but I just really like the colors. It isn't so much about rating the Kamen Rider suits as much as it's the time aspect to Zeo is what really, it's almost like the Infinity Gauntlet in the Marvel universe. We are on a whole another level of powering stuff going on with Zeo. So one person had seen it as their first Kamen Rider show, and they were just so interested when they sort of saw glimpses of other Kamen Riders to go watch those shows. But typically you wouldn't start here because you'd have to kind of know why, what are they doing here. I don't say it'd be confusing because, again, new people have seen it and inspired them to go watch others. It wouldn't be the first one I'd tell them to go watch for sure. You've included another one of, let me blow it up a little bit, another one of the logos here. And same thing, it's got a little bit of the little mini Timex looking watchy thing.
Yeah. So yes, it like you said, it continues that the watch hands in the middle, but it also has 3 dimension, but it's almost entirely flat. There's a slight little change in gradient color right in the middle where the X is, if you're able to see that, right in the middle of the X.
Yeah,
But
right,
everywhere
right there.
else,
Yeah, it's a little
yes,
lighter
yeah,
there, right? Yeah.
it's very very
Yeah,
subtle.
it's
Yes.
more, yeah, at least on my monitor, I can see it's more saturated toward the outside of the pinky stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So they, without really adding any shading or light or highlighting, they've made a 3 dimensional shape here where the left and right characters have, they go off to off into the distance. And the hands of the clock make this sort of X in the middle that almost come like right at you. Um, and I also really like the use of the pink. Now, you said that they often use other colors, or the suits are other colors.
But
So I don't know.
yeah, his one of his main things, of course, is these colors, right? He later turns into this like a gold version of him and so forth. But that's true of
Okay.
lots of Kamen Riders. I think I've never gone. I didn't look at all the logos and go, did they use the first form's Kamen Rider in the logo? I didn't. Maybe it's the one we think of. I didn't really evaluate. It's probably one of the first forms is what they typically do use. They certainly did it with Gav. His primary form is kind of violet, purple, black,
Okay.
and
Okay.
pink
Yeah.
is kind of, when you think of Zeo, you do kind of think of pink. I should have almost brought the Bandai box here because they just made they make a model from Bandai that's one of the figure eyes, and then I could have showed you the actual form in person. But yeah, I mean, this is not, it's just not a random pink. Obviously, it's his primary coloration that you'd think of when you think of Zeo. But it's a
It's a
time
really
travel thing,
nice
and we
color.
got, when again, if a non-Kamen Rider person wouldn't know what this was, but a Kamen Rider person can also, like with Zeo's or some of the other ones we've seen, this basic design, the simplified design, immediately says Zeo because of the time travel aspect.
Hmm.
Let's get to, so we'll at the very end here we'll pick the which one you like the best and which one I like the best. So they're not in any particular order at this point. We're just going through the top 10 and then we'll get to it. So here's another one you've chosen.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
what's this one?
So this one, okay. This is sort of a personal preference. I really am a fan of Vaporwave. If you're familiar with Vaporwave, it was
No.
really big a few years ago.
What's
Um,
vaporwave?
it was sort of a tip of the hat to 80s aesthetic. So you had the pastel pinks and blues and the purples, and you also it was music. to old 80s, say, commercials. So everything had this sort of vintage aesthetic to it, but it had more modern day. I can't even describe. Vaporwave is its own type of music, but um,
So it's music. Vaporwave refers to music?
it's an aesthetic. So it can be auditory or it can be visual.
Where was I for this? I've never even heard of this.
um, well, so I'm sure if you go on YouTube, type vaporwave, you're gonna find tons of stuff.
Oh, the stuff you'll learn. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, this had a vaporwave aesthetic to it, and this was released right around the same time as when vaporwave was really big. So
Okay.
I don't know if there's a connection there or not, but um, it could be coincidence. Um, but also, what's interesting here is that, well, so you have this Spider-Man Venom style
Yeah.
ominous mask on the right side. Um, so I don't know if the Kamen Rider becomes evil or not, or if he's just very aggressive looking in this series. But I thought it was an interesting contrast that you have this very aggressive mask that is a nice pastel blue, and you have pink. Um, and perhaps the this particular Kamen Rider, because they're all based on insects. I see that there is a beehive pattern, so maybe he's some sort of a bee or some other angry, stinging, flying insect. Like
I
a hornet.
I haven't seen Revice, but I have a lot of the toys because I think they're so cool, and I kind of know it. There's two Kamen Rider basically that work in tandem, and the toys do the same thing. And it does pay homage to things in the past too. And there is a whole series of bugs as well that you can use power ups in the belt. So I haven't seen Revice, but I know enough to be dangerous. So the vaporwave thing, never heard of, but the show does have a significant component of almost like previous Kamen Rider, the Kabuto's beetle, of course the grasshopper, and that kind of thing. So I don't know either, Christy, because I haven't seen it. So you're picking apart design elements that I don't know not only the answer to, but your insightful nature has been 100% on so far. We'll both watch Revice and see if you were right, but. All the people watching it that love, and because Revice is very popular show. It's also one of the newer ones too.
Somebody comment and tell me if I'm right.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. What is it we have for Revice? We have this just like the what was it? 01 had one like this, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I just included this because it was a larger depiction of the mask that was in the previous logo. So you can see that the pink is the large eye area, and you have this very angry mouth. And in contrast, you have these non-aggressive colors. You have this light blue, and you have this neon pink. Um, it's just a very striking, interesting contrast.
They're good guys. I mean, most Kamen Riders are, but in this case, it looks mean, but they combine and become a really good force. I mean, they're the heroes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, not saying that he's a villain or anything, but perhaps just this whoever directed this particular one wanted a more aggressive looking Kamen Rider.
They are. I have the toys. Again, I don't know about the show, but it's just a very different look. That's definitely not happy. I mean, the characters don't look particularly happy, but I know they're out fighting justice and injustices, and
Yeah.
I know that it's probably the normal Kamen Rider themes anyway. But we have some of they make action figures, of course, of all this stuff, and the action figures are just significantly different looking. The whole design of Revice is different, and there's this bit of a combination effect as well. That's interesting. So again, we're not doing this in any particular order, but here's another one. Now you sent me the image, and I tried to find one that was a little bit larger. You didn't include one that had the yellow, but that's the basic logo for Kamen Rider Drive.
Drive, yeah.
So again, this is another one of yours. So why'd you choose this one?
So, well, it's a little bit personal, but I really like Initial D. So
Finally, something I know what you're talking about. Yes.
So it reminded me of that. But I also thought was really interesting. when a car is depicted graphically, usually that angle isn't shown because it's kind of a less interesting angle of the car. Usually, more of the front is where most of the design
Mm.
in the development of the car, where when they create the car, it's the most interesting. So here you have kind of the back down at the back left tire of the car. You don't even really see the back of the car. I mean, you don't see anything of the car. You just see this interesting spoiler above the top. So it's a very simplified vehicle, but it does very easily tell you that this is a car. I mean, it doesn't even actually have tires. It's
Mm.
just an outline of a
Yeah.
tire. Um, and the other thing too is that the red with that stripe on it, for whatever reason, it reminded me of Akira. And even
Mm.
though he rides a motorcycle,
Yeah.
it's just for some reason that style just reminds me of it. So, you know, it was for a couple reasons. Again, initial D Akira, but also because I thought it was a very very interesting and unique way to illustrate a vehicle without really showing much of the vehicle. And you also have in the picture that you chose some interesting light streaks, so you can definitely tell that he's going fast.
Yeah.
Um, the one that I selected, I don't
It
think
didn't
I
have that.
really.
I actually like the light streaks because it helps you make out that that's a car.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Kamen Rider is a bike show, but then they threw us a car.
yeah. That's. I also thought that was really interesting that they have a car. Um, so they have quite a dynamic perspective here, where the front of the car is getting smaller because of perspective. It's getting smaller as it goes away from you, but so does the actual um, katakana. It gets smaller as it
Mm.
goes away from you. So there's quite a lot of motion in this logo that you would see very easily, even without the light streaking in the background. So, again, this is a static image, and they've definitely told you that he's going fast.
Yeah, and they that angle of the logo has become fairly common in some of the newer shows. Drives I've seen Drive, and it's a little bit older. The motorcycle purist in me had a little trouble with it, but the Bandai makes a model of the main Kamen Rider, and it's top 5 build for me. It's just so the detail rich in the design of the main Kamen Rider. He's got a big tire that works like a bandolier around his body, but there's just touch upon touch of car references and bits and pieces in just the most wonderful detail in the actual Kamen Rider, and of course in the model as well. Um, so there's a little bit of an Akira thing for me as well here. The car itself in the show is crazy cool, and this is a whole other topic we can't get into. But they've moved further and further away from these highly modified, mocked up vehicles, especially motorcycles, because they keep passing laws that you're not allowed to run around with them in the streets, even with movie set type stuff. So they have to, because of the budget, they can't close down half of Tokyo to film Kamen Rider. So they've this Drive's a little bit older, and they still had this really fun mocked up thing. They've gone, of course, the CGI route to get around this somewhat. But all of us Kamen Rider fans love to see not just a motorcycle, but to see a real representation of it in the show. And so what they did with like Gav, they have a real dirt bike that he runs around on, but it's basically a recolor. There's very little cosplaying done because of safety rules and laws that have been passed recently. But with Drive here, you can see the guy here, right? And you chose one of these loans. I chose this image after you sent me your Drive, so you could just see that. You could just briefly. We don't need to pick apart the Kamen Rider design, but he's got the same main logo with the R figure in the middle of his head right there, and you see the tire. It just goes on and on. This is only a part of the comment. They just really went full car mode here, and I think it just works wonderfully. I do like the show a lot. I think the design's really ingenious. But you had purposely chosen this. You had sent this logo to me as your choice of something you liked.
Yeah. So this I thought, like what I had discussed previously in the video, where you have the main logo, which in Kamen Rider they are particularly design heavy. They have a lot going on in the logos. So here you have this emblem. I assume it's his emblem. Well, yes, you said it's on his helmet. So this is a really cool way to, again, tie in a Kamen Rider Drive, without having to show the entire logo. I mean, you have, as you said, you have the tire that circles around the R. The R is for rider, and it's very angled, again, to show that movement, that he's going fast again. It's a very nice simplification of Kamen Rider Drive. Graphically, it's very nicely balanced, particularly because R's are not symmetrical, and tires obviously are. So they've managed to have a really nice balance with that asymmetry in the middle of the design there. It's very nicely done.
Well, they don't show it here, but one of his main things he does, he pulls stuff off his wrist, and he has a steering wheel sort of weapon thing and a communications device. So you can see here that it's meant to impart to you immediately that it's a steering wheel. I mean, I'm sure that's what they're going for, because motorcycles don't have steering wheels. So they reinforce the steering wheel thing because it is so obviously different than a motorcycle. And also for motorcyclists, we always say we ride bikes. We don't drive bikes.
Right.
Non-motorcyclists will sometimes say, are you driving your bike? And we don't correct people, but it's just kind of weird to hear driving, because we do separate those words as motorcyclists. We will always say we're riding our bike, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, they went full car, and they went full car with the logo. We've got, this is the next one. This is one of mine. This is from 2 shows ago. So right now we're in Gav, and the one that just ended, or that just completed, was Kamen Rider Gotchard. Again, you haven't seen this because this is the one that I'm springing on you. Just initially, it does what I just said. So this is quite modern. I mean, this is only 4 months ago. This was the Kamen Rider out. So Gotchard has that angular effect, just like Drive, in a way, where the Kamen Rider part is you get motion, you get sense of movement, you get a very obvious sense of direction with the arrow, but then the Kamen Rider is quite small because that really is not important at this point. It's been around for so many years. Everyone, even if you can't read Japanese, again, you get used to seeing it when you're a Kamen Rider fan. And then what's more important is the front of the logo has that. Now, again, you just saw it, but here we've got the outline in white around the blue and the color choices. And just, I think they've moved to this. The logo is not going to be a flat 2D image. They're going to have it be, it's some sort of a motion effect.
Mm-hmm.
What do you get? What do you get to see? I know it's the first time you've seen this one. Let's see if I can blow it up here.
So agree with everything you said. They, at this point, Kamen Rider is a very, very well-known brand, particularly in Japan. So there isn't really much of a need to focus on the latter part of the logo, which is off in the distance. The opposite of what Kamen Rider Drive, which was going away from you. This is
I didn't even think about that. Right? Yeah.
I mean, you have arrows, the red and yellow arrow in the background. You have the blue arrow in the logo itself coming right at you. So I don't know the significance of that in relation to Gotchard, but that is a very interesting twist. Were one right after the other?
Yeah, so what happens they're literally every year, and it's almost you can plan it out. You know it's coming. So they also then have the upcoming Kamen Rider appear in a kind of a movie thing with the previous guy. So they tease it. I mean, they're 100% marketing this, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's like, why is that guy with that guy? They do still images, and they transition through, even though the stories have nothing to do with each other. So at the end, there's like a movie where they'll essentially introduce the next rider, the next show, the next design. Like, we were all super eager to find out what the next one was going to be. Everybody does. Around November, December, we're all pining away for what's the next one because we're going to see it. We've had a new Kamen Rider every year, every single year since the year 2000. So it's like clockwork, January to December. And so when Gotchard came out, it's what's the mechanism going to be? This was the second show that the mechanism for making the belts operate were cards, a la Pokemon cards. Cards go into the belt and into the toys, and then depending on the cards are glorious. So we'll be on Gotchard a little too long if I'm not careful, but I do have I own a lot of Gotchard toys. Now, I said I've seen most of it, and I really like Gotchard a lot, but my life got busy. I've only seen half of Gotchard, which is crazy because I really did enjoy it. But now I'm not going to half watch Gav. Gav grabbed me even more than Gotchard did. I really like Gotchard, and I really like collecting the cards. So this is what his primary. So you see the color choice here. That is the Gotchard's initial main suit that's his primary form, right? That we see initially.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge change because, I mean, we generally see red in the actual Kamen Rider logo. They've done the exact opposite. They've used blue. And then they have red as the background that kind of pushes out the logo to make it, pop out. Yeah, they've completely made a complete different color change, and it is very interesting. It looks really cool on the suit.
Yeah, well, because the belts are such a big thing with Kamen Rider, right? This is the primary toy they're selling, belts and the weapons. And the belt, you can kind of see it here. I've got one here. I can show it to you as well. But that arrow isn't just to sort of be a motion thing. The toys and the design of not just the rider, but especially the belt, has these arrows coming in. Let me show that to you.
On the bottom of his shoes, even.
Yeah. So every Kamen Rider has a different footprint as well. So there's always a design to every single Kamen Rider's footprint. So in the models, you'll see that too. So that's not an accidental thing that there's this funny design in the bottom of his shoe. It's the running thing, right? But yes, you can see exactly that. It's coming together in the center because you put two things together. There's these cards, and you can change his form based on one card goes in the other. Let me show you. Here's my DX. So the DX is the lower end stuff, and the CSM are the nice belts. This is the Gotchard main belt. So in here are slots that you put essentially they're collectible cards. The cards are glorious. The artwork in the cards are very collectible. And a lot of people did buy them. We need them. It's the second time they've done this. And some people aren't that crazy about now they got to go buy all these cards to make their belt work. But if you're a collector of cards, or you like Pokemon cards and Magic and all that stuff, then I do like it. And sure enough, I collected all the cards. I mean, it can get expensive because they're in those packs where you got to just buy pack upon pack upon pack. And then, of course, they have legendaries and rares and stuff. So this one, here's one of the cards. I'll try to keep this short because we're talking about logos. Here's just one of the cards. And you can see the arrows at the bottom. So there's 10 levels, and there's number 5. So this one has 5 of the arrows filled. And there's just so many cute little... The Gotchard is glorious looking. But what you do is you put the card... So it has a QR code. This is very important. So the cards aren't just graphics. This is what activates the toys. We'd be on, there's years of your life you could talk about these toys, and people have entire channels doing nothing but these toys. But I'll just at least show you briefly. It's hard to do it when you're showing it instead of doing it. So now it gives me so there's a million ways to operate this with the different cards, and it just made the I don't like you sound. But so then you're supposed to stick a second card in there, and I just don't. Oh, I have another card in there. I have Gotchard. So there's holographic ones and more rare ones. So you have to know how to stick the card in there properly so the thing activates it. But you pull it out, it'll make sounds, and it'll light up, and it'll do all sorts of fun stuff. Well, I'm operating improperly. That's why it's making the beep, beep, beep sound. So I can't do it reversed out. But, of course, before we did this, I played with my toy enough to where I know how to operate it. But you've got to stick sort of the right card to get the right combination. They make lots of weapons and add-on kits. Oh, there we go. Now it's working. So you can hit the little trigger here. Now, these toys, they do make some adult-sized versions. These are very expensive. These are basically kids' toys. So they're kind of like a grown man... I don't want to find me out in public with this. Cops will get me anyway. But this one also has a card slot in it there, you see.
Okay.
And I can't go to the whole toys of it, but you see how colorful and fun, if you look at the logo here again about where they've got this, that, it all looks like it's completely going to work together, obviously. And then, again, this is not a toy review, and I can't spend the time to do it, but this thing transforms, and it goes on top of this, and then you put the card... You could slide all the different cards out of here and stick the different card in. So there's, again, I can't show. We're done with the toy show, but you can see why the logo is the main thing is this X factor and arrows of things coming together. And in the belt, you push two things together toward the center. So there's a lot of arrow imagery in the thing. Of course, I and Anastasia here at Gun for Japan, we've both collected page book upon book of all the Kamen Rider guide chart people. We have
How
them
many
all.
packs did you have to open?
I'm not showing you my super duper rare ones because they're in a special hard binder. This is card people put them in expensive sleeves. Anyway, we both own all of them because we opened up a lot of packs. So that's part of Kamen Rider. But the logo in this case isn't just the colors of his suit. I wanted to say that when you watch the shows, then the logo will also indicate to us somewhat, like with Gav, it's a mouth. And even because when they first introduced you to the new show, you can tell a lot about the logo, about what may be coming. So a little mouthy logo gave us the idea that they were going to be eating things. So let me go back here to our logo discussion. There we go. So we're back to that's the Gav one again, to show you that it's got his own little footprint there. And look how that's his main form. That's what he looks like. That's the purple and teal I was telling you about.
Yep.
And a very hungry looking logo, right? All right, and there's the toys I was playing with, because you can't really see it, but that's what they look like. And there's one of the cards on it as well. That is, there's also an entire train, a choo-choo train called a 10-liner. That's an entire toy that goes on the front of that belt. This would be one of the largest, heaviest belts to be wearing around. The thing gets huge. I'm like, how's a kid want to wear this thing? Here is one of yours and one of mine. We both like this one, so we both chose this one. This is, let me see if will it blow up? Yeah. This is Kamen Rider Kiva. One of my top 3 favorite Kamen Rider shows. You haven't seen Kiva because, again, you've only seen the primary show. So why did you pick Kiva? Now, you picked it not knowing that it was one of my favorites in logo as well.
No, we picked independently.
Yes.
So this also stood out to me as something unique because it also it kind of looks like it's out of a Diablo kind of a game, you know. Everything is red. It's almost like a fiery background. And again, I know the Kamen Riders themselves, they're not evil, but this looks like it's from a completely different universe. Like even like another planet kind of a thing. You have this bat-like graphical creature in the background with these horns, you know, in the wings along the side there.
And again, you don't know anything about Kiva?
No.
Yeah, there's a bat. The bat comes out of the belt, and it's a big part. Yeah. It's basically his familiar. I love Kiva. Yeah, the bat is very central to the whole thing. So it's basically Kamen Rider in Transylvania haunted house thing with bats in this thing. But of course they're
going to say vampire.
Yeah, they're generations of people that have passed down the duty of protecting people from the bad people. There's always the bad people they're protecting from. So they are vampire-y looking things. That's the whole theme of it. But the bat itself, I don't think I have a picture of it. The bat is adorable. I mean, it's a bat, but it's very colorful and it makes squeaky sounds and stuff, right? It is not a scary bat. But you're right. I mean, again, I'm congratulating you again on just by logo design piecing together the vibe of the whole show. It is one of my here's the I keep referencing the Bandai toys. So here is the new, relatively new. It only came out about 6 months ago. This is, let me put the camera on it. This is Kamen Rider Kiva.
Cool.
And you can see there's chains. Let's see if there's can I get this to focus on blah, blah, without the lights on it? That's one of the iconic kicks he's doing there. We'll get in the center here.
Oh yeah.
The kind of classic kick. So you can see just based on this design, now that you've seen it, that it's all vampire-y haunted house kind of business, right? So that's one of the ones we have for Kiva. It has the text and the graphical image, but there is just when you know Kamen Rider and you see this, you immediately, that's Kiva, right? You immediately know that's Kiva. So you chose this one. This was your image you sent to me, right?
Yeah. Just to complement the previous logo, the symbol for Kiva itself is just so striking. It definitely looks and says vampire bat to me. So
blood red, blood red here, right?
Yeah, well, the red for sure. But you have this. It can act as either horns in the middle, or it could be a crescent moon for night because that's when the bats come
Yeah,
out.
that's right. It's a nighttime thing. And he does a wonderful scene where he flies up and the moon's in the background, very Transylvania, Dracula type stuff. But it's a very iconic moment in the show, too, where the moon and the night is very part of it as well.
Yeah. You have these very nice fine points to the ends of the wings, but then you have these very nice little delicate curvatures in there as well. So it's a really nice balance where you don't have too many angles and you don't have too many curves. You have a nice complementing balance of both in here. And I'm always a sucker for symmetry too, so this is beautifully symmetrical.
Yeah. Yeah, I just love this. I love the show. I love the design of this thing. It was one of the motorcycles I was going. It's an old Honda Shadow is the motorcycle in the show, and it is cosplayed up some, but not so much that I couldn't pull it off. So I thought about getting that year Honda Shadow and trying to replicate it and go cosplay with that thing, but I wound up electing to just get. I have a KTM motorcycle right now, and just cosplay motorcycle might have laws in Japan not to do it, but the reality of actually running around with any bike that's been modified is just too dangerous, and I'm just not going to do it personally. But of any bike I'd want to ride around on and be cosplayed, I'd want to be Kiva. It's one of the ones I'd be most interested in becoming Kiva. I love the design. It's so iconic. His bike's, of course, kind of blood red, not heavily modified. I think we do have one more Kiva one here, I think. Yes, so they make, and I own a couple of them, and I'd love to collect these things. They make these little acrylic, very nice quality acrylic things for all the Kamen Rider shows, and typically it's their logo. So it's interesting. You get sometimes very 3D, or let's see if I can blow it up. This one, I just wanted to show that the good design, like with Mecha Neko from Mecha from Japan. As soon as you gave me the robotic cat, I immediately was going to make a plushie out of it. Right, it translates into a 3D object really well and graphically. It's not just Kiva; they make a lot of these acrylic things, and how it plays out on a little 3D effect is kind of interesting. Of course, they had to choose colors and this kind of thing, but I just wanted to show you a picture of Kiva's design in a physical merchandise thing that you can purchase as well with just the logo.
Very cool.
There's a lot of these acrylic things.
How big are they?
I have one from the original show. It's an homage to the original show, and it's 5 or 6 inches. It's multi-layered. It's much more complex than this. They make some that are even like extra fancy versions that do include pictures of the riders. Some are just literally the logo, and so they're only about this big. But Kiva's one of my favorites for sure. But you and I had both picked Kiva.
Yes.
And then the next one I had picked myself because it is my favorite logo. It's the Kamen Con logo. Yes, you knew this was coming because, of course, I've already told you it was coming. So since it's your logo, I had to choose it. So it's like, my favorite one's mine. Of course, it's obvious that we should both love it because you created it. Right. We can both love it. You created it, and I've adopted it to the point that this is half of my personality is now built into this thing. Now, there is a number of Kamen Con logos you made for me. We clearly do not need to repeat the fact that we have an entire episode about this, which, again, I will link once again so you can click on it and go listen to your very, very interesting rationale for how and why I love this and how you created our Kamen Con. But it is the colorful version we talked about on as well. It's the version that I kind of am leaning for using as many as I possibly can. This is one of your lockups. This is one of the files that said lockup.
Yes, that's the lockup. Don't move anything.
Right. I won't even ask you to comment on this. We already have an entire video about this, but I just love my favorite Kamen Rider logo for me is, without fail, my logo that you've created for me. So thank you again. We will talk about which Kamen Rider existing show's logo we like the best. But I do have the one more here, and this is one of the primary graphics you sent me as a presentation. Again, we cover this on the other podcast. This is how you took the original logo and compartmentalized it, or you took pieces of the original one and made my logo for Kamen Con. So thank you again. I really do love this thing like little else in life because I love Kamen Rider so much and I love your design. You put the two things together and you have a very happy Kamen Rider fellow on your hands here. And again, I just wanted to show this because I really, really do love it. And it is the last slide here, but we can now announce at the end of our podcast here which is your favorite and which is my favorite, and is it the same? So we can cycle through here. There's Gotchard Drive. We'll go all the way back to the beginning. There's some Hibiki 001. So which of these that we've cycled through here is your favorite? Oh,
This is hard because I like them, but I'm gonna say device. Revice.
Am I gonna give people seizures?
Revice, not device. It's my favorite.
Yeah, this one, right? The Revice one. Yeah, that's your favorite.
Revice. Yeah, it just.
You love that vapor thing, huh?
I really do. It speaks to me. Vaporwave. Yeah, I love the color combinations here a lot. And they have some very delicate outlines to the logo on the exterior of the logo. They don't have any harsh, bold black outlines on the outside of the Kamen Rider verbiage itself. They just have a very subtle drop shadow to distinguish it from the background. So there's a lot of more delicate details to the design here, while still making it very obviously Kamen Rider.
Well, that's it is a wonderful. I know, even though I haven't seen most of it, it is a wonderful show. So since this is your favorite, at some point you'll have to put this on your watch list now.
Yes.
I'm sure you'll enjoy it because everyone seems to really, really enjoy it. We don't agree. I do love all the logos. Again, there's none of them I dislike. You just, you got to pick a preference for which one you like. My, my initial thing, and we talked about it before we even went on the podcast, that, I just love Kiva so much. But actually, as we've done this and you've talked about it, and probably just the temporal nature of it, but that's mine. And I don't think it has much to do with the logo. I do like the logo, and I like the little munchy stomach thing. I am so into Gav right now. I'm so in love with this show. It inspired the podcast. I mean, it's such a wonderful, fun thing. Something I used to watch One Piece. I'm caught up in the anime, but not in the manga. But I watched One Piece primarily because it was the happy thing that let me smile and have an escape from things and a nice positive message. And Gav is doing that for me right now because One Piece has gotten very fight-oriented. The stakes are very high. I mean, we're 1,100 episodes into it, so it is what it is. I don't dislike One Piece now, but I enjoyed the journey more than I'm enjoying where it's at now. I don't have the refuge of One Piece I used to have. And, of course, I've loved Kamen Riders since 1972 for me personally. That's when I started watching it as a kid in Japan. But Gav has come back in my life at a time where, even though Gotchard was similar to it and giving me this fun outlet, Gav's level of potato chippy goomy thing is just got me giddy happy. The 7-year-old in me is screaming with joy, and so the logo wins for me just because it embodies a wonderful moment in my life where I'm enjoying Kamen Rider again like hardly ever before, except for Shin Master Rider. So don't get me started, right? Well, Christi,
this is a really fun logo, so it perfectly matches the theme of that.
Makes me hungry. I want to eat candy.
Yeah, it does. It's perfect.
Well, Christi, let me get to just you and I on the screen as we bid adieu. I do heartfeltly thank you again for not joining me, not twice in a row, but the length of time that you've spent with us to be able to dissect this. I think for most people, they're going to find what I find from it, that even the Gav one or something, it's like people don't really look at it or try to pick it apart, and maybe rightfully so. But I think we can all appreciate the artistry and the effort that goes into creating, especially Kamen Rider. There's so many people involved in making the anime and the different things that we consume from Japan that I think when you do look a little closer, like we've done here with your expert information, that you can really appreciate the thought, the care, the creativity. It's just a wonderful thing to be a part of and also be maybe more knowledgeable with. So thank you so much for giving us insider baseball from a pro.
No problem. It was a lot of fun to dissect all of these.
Thank you.
To be right without actually looking into the history of any of them.
Yes, that was actually the major takeaway, is that you figured all the show's stuff out. And I don't think the logos are that obvious. Hibiki, you just literally get a giant gold star for that one. And hopefully I'll be able to talk you into one more, because I do want to have you on one more time with a Mecha from Japan, and we will talk about when Anastasia's there. So you can go to @Mecha from Japan and go to that YouTube channel, and I will link your bio and people the way to contact you if they want to engage with you as well. and that'll be in the description below. And then hopefully I'll see you again on Mecha from Japan talking about the Mecha Neko.
Yes, I'm excited. I look forward to it.
For now, it's Rider Kick.
Rider Kick. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. It was great. Thanks again for everything.
Bye.
Bye.